I never thought one decision could change my life forever. I was just a regular woman, living what I thought was a normal, peaceful life. My husband worked long hours, and I was busy taking care of our little girl, Emily. She had just turned 4, full of energy and curiosity, and I loved every second with her. But as much as I adored being with her, I knew I needed some help. Between house chores, bills, and a part-time job from home, I was drowning. That's when the idea of hiring a babysitter came up. At first, I was hesitant. I mean, who could I really trust with my daughter? She was my whole world. But my husband insisted. "We just need someone for a few hours a day," he said. "Someone to keep an eye on Emily so you can focus on work." "It'll be fine, fine." That's what I kept telling myself. I interviewed a few girls, most of them young, sweet college students looking to make extra money. But none of them felt right. Then one day, I got a call from a girl named Hannah. She sounded polite, respectful, and a little shy. Her voice had this softness to it that immediately made me feel at ease. When she came over for the interview, she seemed perfect. She was in her early 20s, with long brown hair and a kind smile. She brought a little stuffed bunny as a gift for Emily, and my daughter loved her instantly. That should have been a good sign, right? But something deep inside me hesitated. I couldn't explain it. It was just this little flicker of unease, like my gut was trying to warn me. But I ignored it. We needed help, and Hannah seemed like the perfect choice. The first few days were normal enough. She played with Emily, read her stories, even helped me with dishes when I was running late. She was always polite, always smiling, always just a little too perfect, and I convinced myself that I was lucky to have found her. But then things started happening. Small things I brushed off at first. One night, I went into Emily's room to kiss her goodnight, and she whispered to me, "Mommy, Hannah told me not to tell you our secrets." I froze. "What secrets, sweetie?" I asked, but Emily just giggled and said, "It's a game." I tried not to overthink it. Babysitters play little games with kids, right? Nothing unusual. But the way Emily said it, the way her eyes darted to the corner of the room like someone might be listening, it made my stomach twist. The next week, I noticed Hannah spending more time in the house after her hours were over. She'd linger in the kitchen, making tea, chatting with me like we were friends. But her questions were always personal. Too personal. She wanted to know about my marriage, about my husband's work, even about my childhood. At first, I thought she was just trying to connect. But then she started finishing my sentences, like she already knew the answers. One evening, I caught her staring at a photo on the mantel, our wedding picture. Her eyes weren't soft or admiring. They were sharp, almost calculating. When she noticed me watching, she smiled and said, "You look so happy there." I hope nothing ever changes that. I laughed awkwardly, but my heart skipped a beat. Something wasn't right. And then, the nightmares began. Emily would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, crying about a dark shadow in her room. I rushed in to comfort her, holding her tiny body as she shook with fear. But when I asked what she saw, she'd only say, "Hannah told me not to tell." That's when I started watching her more closely. One afternoon, I came home earlier than expected. The house was quiet, too quiet. I found Emily sitting on the floor of her room, drawing with crayons. Hannah was sitting beside her, whispering something into her ear. When they saw me, Hannah jumped a little, like she'd been caught. Emily quickly crumpled the paper she was drawing on and shoved it under her bed. I asked her to show me the drawing, but she shook her head furiously. "It's Hannah's secret," she said. That night, when everyone was asleep, I went back into Emily's room. My hands shook as I pulled out the crumpled paper from under her bed. It was a picture of our family, me, my husband, and Emily. But standing behind us was a tall, dark figure with no face. And written in shaky, childish letters at the bottom were the words, "She's watching us." My blood went cold. The next day, I told my husband everything. He laughed at first, said I was being paranoid. But I could see it in his eyes. He was unsettled too. He agreed we should let Hannah go, but when I tried to bring it up with her, she didn't react the way I expected. Instead of looking surprised or hurt, she just smiled. "I knew this day would come," she whispered. "But you can't keep me away from her. She needs me more than you think." Her voice was calm, too calm, like she wasn't afraid of losing the job. I stood there frozen, unable to respond. And then she walked past me, brushing her shoulder against mine in a way that sent chills down my spine. That night, Emily cried herself to sleep. Begging me to bring Hannah back, I didn't. But what I didn't know was that letting Hannah go was only the beginning of my nightmare. For the first time in weeks, the house felt empty. Too empty. I thought firing Hannah would bring peace back into our lives, but instead, it felt like she had left behind a shadow that clung to every corner. I kept telling myself it was over, that my family was safe again. But deep down, I knew something was still wrong. The first few nights were difficult. Emily would cry herself to sleep, whispering Hannah's name over and over like she was calling for her. I tried everything, songs, bedtime stories, even lying beside her until she drifted off. But she would still wake up in the middle of the night, trembling, asking, "When is Hannah coming back?" The strange part was how she said it, not like a question, but like she knew Hannah was returning. One evening, after another long battle trying to get Emily to bed, I went downstairs for a glass of water. That's when I heard it, a soft knock on the front door. It was nearly midnight. My husband was asleep upstairs, and the street outside was quiet. Every hair on my body stood on end. Slowly, I walked to the door, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it would wake the whole house. I looked through the peephole. No one was there. I told myself it was just my imagination, maybe the wind rattling something. But when I opened the door just to be sure, I found something lying on the doormat, a crumpled piece of paper. I bent down, my hands shaking as I picked it up. It was a drawing, just like the ones Emily made, but this time it wasn't of our family. It was of Hannah, her long brown hair, her smile, and her holding hands with Emily. And at the bottom, in those same childish letters, were the words, "I'll always be here." My blood ran cold. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my hands trembling so badly I could barely twist the key. I wanted to wake my husband, but some part of me knew he wouldn't believe me. Not fully. He'd just say I was tired, that I was letting my fear get the best of me, so I kept it to myself. But things only got worse. The next day, Emily's toys started moving around on their own. I'd find her dolls lined up in a perfect circle, all facing the same way. I'd put them back in her toy box, but hours later, they'd be back in that same eerie formation. When I asked Emily about it, she'd smile sweetly and say, "Hannah did it. She likes playing with me when you're busy." I wanted to scream, to shake her, to tell her Hannah was gone, but instead I swallowed my fear and told myself it was just her imagination. Kids make things up, right? That's what I told myself. But then, one night, something happened that I couldn't ignore. I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Soft, slow, deliberate, coming from upstairs. My first thought was Emily had gotten out of bed. I got up, heart racing, and crept up the stairs. The hallway was dark, but I could see the faint glow of light spilling from Emily's room. I pushed the door open, and my heart nearly stopped. Emily was sitting up in bed, her eyes wide and unblinking. And standing next to her, holding her hand, was Hannah. At least, it looked like Hannah. Her face was pale, almost too pale, and her smile stretched wider than I'd ever seen before. Her eyes seemed darker, emptier. She turned to look at me, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. "See, Mommy?" Emily whispered. "I told you she'd come back." I blinked. And just like that, Hannah was gone. The room was empty, except for Emily, who still sat there. Smiling, I rushed to her, pulling her into my arms, trying to calm her trembling body. "It's just a dream, baby," I whispered, though my own voice was shaking. Just a dream, but I knew it wasn't. From that night on, the house no longer felt like ours. Shadows seemed to linger longer than they should. The air felt heavy, thick with something unseen. And every time I closed my eyes, I could feel her, Hannah, watching me. I tried to talk to my husband about it, but he dismissed me. "You're stressed," he said. "You're overthinking. Hannah is gone. That's it." But then something happened that made him believe. It was a Saturday morning, and he was in the garage fixing something while I made breakfast. Emily was in the living room, quietly coloring. Suddenly I heard her giggle, a soft, innocent laugh that usually brought me joy, except this time it froze me in place because she was saying a name. Hannah. "Stop tickling me, Hannah." I dropped the spatula and ran into the living room. Emily was sitting on the floor, her crayons scattered around her. She was giggling, twisting like someone invisible was poking her sides. Her eyes darted to the empty space beside her, and she whispered, "Stop it, Hannah. Mommy will see." My husband walked in behind me, his face pale. He saw it too. He saw the way Emily's shirt lifted slightly, like fingers tugging at it, even though no one was there. We both stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. And then, just as quickly as it started, it stopped. Emily looked up at us, her smile fading when she saw the terror on our faces. "What's wrong?" she asked softly. "Don't you see her?" That was the moment my husband finally believed me. We agreed we had to do something, anything. We tried burning sage, praying, even having a local pastor bless the house. For a while it seemed to help. The atmosphere lightened. Emily slept through the night. And I thought maybe, just maybe, we were free. But then, one evening, as I was tucking Emily into bed, she leaned close to me and whispered, "Hannah says she's angry with you. She doesn't like when you try to make her go away." Her little voice sent chills straight through my bones. I tried to stay calm, brushing her hair back gently. "Sweetheart, Hannah isn't here anymore. It's just us." Emily shook her head, her eyes wide and serious. "She's right behind you." My blood turned to ice. I didn't dare turn around. Instead, I forced a smile, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Go to sleep, baby." But as I walked out of her room, I could feel it. The presence behind me, watching, waiting. And deep down, I knew this wasn't just about Emily anymore. Hannah wanted something more, something from me. After that night, I could no longer pretend things were normal. I felt her everywhere. In the cold drafts that swept through closed windows, in the shadows that seemed to stretch toward me, even when the lights were on, in the silence that fell over the house like a heavy blanket, and worst of all, I felt her inside my daughter. Emily's sweet, playful nature started to change. She became distant, secretive, and sometimes she would say things that a child her age should never even know. Like the morning she looked at me across the breakfast table, her little voice calm and almost too old for her years. "Mommy," she said, "Hannah told me Daddy has secrets from you." My spoon froze halfway to my mouth. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" She tilted her head, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "She says Daddy lies when he says he's working late. She says you shouldn't trust him." I wanted to dismiss it, just a child repeating nonsense, but the way she said it, the sharpness in her tone, it was as though Hannah herself was speaking through her. When I confronted my husband that evening, he swore up and down that it wasn't true. He grabbed my hands, looked me in the eyes, and said, "Don't let her get into your head. That's what she wants." But doubt had already been planted, and once it was there, it grew like poison. Every late night at the office, every glance at his phone, every time he seemed distracted or distant, Hannah's voice echoed in my head, whispering through Emily's lips. And it wasn't just me. My husband started hearing things too. He'd wake up in the middle of the night, sweating, swearing that someone had been standing at the foot of the bed. He even said he heard Hannah humming in the shower when no one was there. Our marriage began to crumble under the weight of it. Arguments became constant, about money, about trust, about whether we should leave the house. But where would we go? We thought about staying with his mother, but Emily screamed when we suggested it. "No, Hannah won't find me there. She'll be mad." It was the way she said it, not fearful, but loyal. Like she didn't want to leave Hannah behind. That terrified me more than anything. One night, things came to a breaking point. I was in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner, when I heard Emily talking. At first, I thought she was playing with her dolls, but as I moved closer to the living room, I realized she was having a full conversation. Her voice was soft, giggling, then pausing, then responding, like she was listening to someone. I peeked around the corner. Emily sat cross-legged on the floor, her eyes fixed on the empty space beside her. She nodded, laughed, and whispered, "Okay, I'll do it." My blood ran cold. I stepped into the room and asked, "Sweetheart, who are you talking to?" She looked up at me, her expression blank. "Hannah," she said simply. "She wants me to do something." My throat tightened. "What does she want you to do?" Emily's lips curled into a smile that didn't look like hers. "She wants me to make you go away." For a moment, the world tilted around me. My little girl, the one I carried, the one I loved more than life itself, was looking at me with someone else's eyes. I dropped to my knees, grabbing her tiny shoulders. "Emily, listen to me. Hannah is not your friend. She's dangerous. You can't listen to her." She tilted her head, that eerie smile never fading. "You don't understand. Hannah says you're the dangerous one. She says you're trying to hurt me." Tears burned my eyes. "No, baby, no. I would never," but before I could finish, Emily screamed, a piercing, ear-splitting scream that shattered the air. My husband came running, demanding to know what was happening. And when Emily pointed at me, sobbing that I was scaring her, I saw it, the flicker of doubt in his eyes. That was the moment Hannah won. She was turning us against each other, using Emily as her weapon. The next few days blurred together. My husband barely spoke to me, his face tense and closed off. Emily refused to eat anything I cooked, saying Hannah told her not to. I started feeling like a stranger in my own home, like the walls themselves were rejecting me. And then the accidents began. One morning, I came down the stairs and nearly slipped on a puddle of water. A vase had fallen from the shelf above the landing, shattered into pieces, and water had soaked the steps. But the thing is, I hadn't put a vase there. No one had. Another time, I woke up to the smell of smoke. I rushed into the kitchen to find the stove on, flames licking the edge of a dish towel. Emily was standing in the doorway, clutching her bunny, watching silently. When I pulled her away and demanded to know why she turned the stove on, she just whispered, "It wasn't me." "Hannah says you need to burn." I nearly collapsed right there. It was clear now. Hannah didn't just want Emily. She wanted me gone. One night, after another heated fight with my husband, I locked myself in the bathroom just to breathe. My reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger. Dark circles under my eyes, my skin pale, my hair disheveled, and then I saw her. For a split second, Hannah's face appeared behind me in the mirror. Her smile stretched unnaturally wide, her eyes hollow and black. I spun around, but the bathroom was empty. That was the night I realized I couldn't fight her alone anymore. I needed help. I contacted a woman I'd read about online, a spiritual healer who specialized in cleansing homes. Desperate, I begged her to come. When she arrived, the air in the house seemed to shift immediately, like Hannah knew she was a threat. The healer walked slowly through each room, murmuring prayers under her breath, sprinkling salt and lighting candles. Emily watched silently, her face blank, her small hands gripping her stuffed bunny so tightly I thought it would tear. When the healer stepped into Emily's room, the air grew icy cold. The candle she carried flickered violently, then went out. She turned to me, her face pale. "She doesn't want to leave," the woman whispered. I felt my knees weaken. "Can you make her go?" The healer shook her head slowly. "This isn't just a spirit. She's attached herself to your child, breaking that bond." "It will not be easy," Emily suddenly screamed, her voice twisting into something inhuman. "Get out!" she shrieked, her tiny hands covering her ears. "You can't take Hannah away from me." The force of her scream sent the candle flying from the healer's hand. The flame died on the floor, leaving us in darkness. When the lights flickered back on, Emily had collapsed on the bed, unconscious. The healer grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "If you want to save her," she said urgently, "you need to understand, Hannah isn't just a ghost. She's something far worse." And in that moment, I realized the nightmare was only just beginning. The healer's words echoed in my mind long after she left. Hannah isn't just a ghost. She's something far worse. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat at the edge of Emily's bed, watching her chest rise and fall, terrified she might wake up with that same eerie smile that no longer belonged to her. My husband dozed in the armchair across the room, But even in sleep, I could see the strain in his face. The silence pressed down on me like a weight. And then, just as I began to drift, I heard it, a whisper. Soft, almost tender, right next to my ear. She was supposed to be mine. I shot up, my eyes darting around the room. No one was there. Emily stirred but didn't wake. My husband slept on, but the voice, it lingered. It wasn't just a sound. It was a claim. The next morning, desperate for answers, I called the healer again. She agreed to meet me privately, away from the house. We met at a small cafe, and the moment she saw me, she shook her head. "You need to understand," she began, her voice low and urgent. "Spirits like Hannah. They were human once, but something twisted them. When they die with anger, obsession, or unfinished desires, they don't cross over. They stay, and over time they become something else. Something darker." I felt sick. "So who was she?" "Why, my daughter." The healer hesitated, then pulled a small bundle of old newspaper clippings from her bag. "I did some digging after I left your house. Hannah isn't just a random spirit. She lived in your neighborhood. About 15 years ago." My hands shook as I unfolded the yellowed paper. The headline made my stomach drop. "Local babysitter found dead after tragic accident." The photo was blurry but unmistakable. Hannah. Younger, but the same long brown hair, the same smile. The article explained that Hannah had been hired by a family just a few streets away. One evening, while caring for their little girl, there had been a fire. The child escaped, but Hannah didn't. She was trapped inside the burning house. The part that made my blood run cold was a single line at the end of the article. Neighbors reported Hannah had grown unusually attached to the child in her care, often referring to her as my own. The healer's eyes locked onto mine. She lost the child she believed was hers. Now she's found another. I couldn't breathe. My mind reeled with the realization. Hannah hadn't just chosen Emily by chance. She had been searching, waiting, and now she wanted to replace me. When I returned home, everything felt different. The walls seemed to hum with her presence. The air was heavy, charged with something I couldn't see but could feel in my bones. And Emily? She was slipping further away. That evening, I tried to talk to her. I sat on her bed, brushing her hair gently, my heart breaking at how distant her eyes looked. "Sweetheart," I whispered, "do you know who Hannah really is?" Emily blinked at me, her expression blank. Then she smiled faintly. "Of course I do. She told me. She said she was alone for so long. She said you don't love me like she does." Tears burned my eyes. "That's not true, baby. I love you more than anything in this world. You're my little girl." But Emily shook her head. "No, I'm her little girl now." Her voice was flat, cold. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed her tiny hands, gripping them tighter than I meant to. "Listen to me, Emily." "She's lying to you. She's dangerous. She's not your friend." Suddenly the lights flickered. The room grew icy cold. Emily's eyes rolled back and her mouth opened, but the voice that came out wasn't hers. She was supposed to be mine. I stumbled back, my body trembling as the air filled with a low, guttural growl that shook the walls. Emily's small frame convulsed, her stuffed bunny falling to the floor. My husband rushed in, his face pale with terror. He grabbed Emily, shaking her gently, calling her name. For a moment, her eyes cleared and she clung to him, sobbing. But then, over his shoulder, I saw her. Hannah, standing in the corner of the room. Her body was faint, flickering like smoke, but her face was twisted, her smile grotesque. Her eyes locked onto mine, and in that moment, I understood. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. Hannah wanted to destroy me, to take my place. The days that followed were a blur of terror. Objects moved on their own. Doors slammed shut without warning. Whispers filled the house at all hours. And Emily grew colder, more detached, her laughter sounding less like a child's and more like an echo. One night, I found her in the kitchen at 3 a.m., standing on a chair, reaching for the knives. When I asked her what she was doing, she looked at me calmly and said, "Hannah says you won't let me stay with her. She says I have to make you go away." I ripped the knife from her hands, my heart shattering into a million pieces. This was no longer my daughter speaking. I couldn't let it go on. I called the healer again, begging her to return. She agreed, but her warning still haunts me. If Hannah has anchored herself to Emily, separating them will be dangerous. For both of them, when the night came, the ritual began. Candles lit every corner of Emily's room, salt circles drawn on the floor, the healer chanting prayers in a language I didn't understand. Emily sat in the center, her small body trembling, her eyes unfocused. I held her hand, whispering, "I'm here, baby." "Mommy's here." The temperature in the room dropped. The flames of the candles bent sideways as if a storm raged inside the house. And then Hannah appeared, not faint this time, not flickering, solid. Her hair hung in tangled strands, her skin pale and cracked like porcelain. Her eyes burned with fury as she stepped into the circle. "You can't take her from me," she hissed, her voice echoing off the walls. "She's mine." I clutched Emily tighter, my tears falling onto her tiny hands. "No, she's my daughter. You can't have her." Hannah's face twisted, her smile stretching impossibly wide. "You don't deserve her. You don't protect her. You don't love her like I do. She belongs with me." The healer's voice rose, chanting louder, faster, as the air thickened with pressure. Hannah screamed, a sound so piercing it rattled the windows. The candles flickered violently, some extinguishing altogether. Emily writhed in my arms, her voice shifting between her own and Hannah's. "Let me go." "She's hurting me. Mommy, please let me go to her." My heart shattered, but I held on. "No, baby, no. It's not you talking. It's her. Fight her, Emily, fight." Hannah lunged forward, her form crashing against the invisible barrier of the salt circle. The ground shook beneath us, and for a moment I thought the whole house would collapse. The healer screamed one final word, thrusting her hands into the air. The candles flared, blindingly bright, filling the room with light. And then, silence. When the light faded, Hannah was gone. Emily lay limp in my arms, her breathing shallow but steady. My husband knelt beside us, tears streaming down his face. The healer collapsed to the floor, her body shaking with exhaustion. For the first time in weeks, the house was quiet, but deep inside, I knew it wasn't over, because as I carried Emily to bed, she stirred in my arms, her lips moving just enough for me to hear the faintest whisper. "She'll come back." For days after the ritual, the house felt different. Lighter, quieter. The heavy air that had suffocated us seemed to finally lift. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could hear birds outside the window in the morning instead of whispers in the dark. Emily slept through the night. She even laughed again, a sound I thought I might never hear. My husband and I held each other, silently thanking God that we had survived. But deep down, I couldn't shake her words. "She'll come back." It became a mantra in my head, a constant reminder that peace might only be temporary. The healer warned me before she left. "She's weaker now, but not gone. If she finds a way back, it will be through cracks in your family, through fear, through doubt, and those cracks, they were already there. My marriage hadn't fully recovered. My husband avoided talking about what had happened, burying himself in work. And I couldn't stop looking over my shoulder, listening for Hannah's return. For a while, I convinced myself we were safe. Weeks passed with no sign of her. Emily grew brighter, stronger. She started drawing happy pictures again. Sunny skies, flowers, our family holding hands. I taped them to the fridge, desperate to believe in normal life. But then, the signs began creeping back. At first, it was small. Emily's bunny, the stuffed toy Hannah had given her, reappeared on her bed even after I hid it away in the attic. I'd throw it out, only to find it back in Emily's arms the next morning. Then came the whispers. Not loud this time, faint, almost too faint to hear, like a breath against my ear when the house was quiet. "She's still mine." I tried to tell myself it was just paranoia. But then, the drawings changed again. One afternoon, I found a new picture taped to Emily's door. It was of our family again, but this time my face was scribbled out with black crayon. Standing in my place was Hannah, her smile drawn wider than humanly possible. When I asked Emily why she drew it, she looked at me with those innocent eyes and said, because that's how it's going to be. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding. I knew Hannah was clawing her way back, and then came the dream. I was in Emily's room, the air heavy with smoke. Flames licked the walls, and I could hear a child screaming. I turned, desperate to find her, but instead, I saw Hannah standing in the corner, her face glowing in the firelight. "You took her from me once," she whispered, her voice dripping with venom. "But this time, I'll take everything from you." I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. But the smell of smoke lingered in the air. When I ran to Emily's room, I found her sitting up in bed, wide awake, clutching her bunny. "She says it's almost time," Emily whispered. That was when I realized the ritual hadn't ended it. It had only delayed the inevitable. I couldn't let Hannah win. Not again. The healer was too exhausted to return, so I began researching everything I could. Books, forums, even old legends about spirits who attach themselves to children. I learned one thing that terrified me. Sometimes, the only way to banish a spirit permanently was to force it to face the truth of its own death, which meant Hannah had to be confronted. The thought alone nearly broke me. But I knew I had no choice. The next night, when my husband left for work, I sat Emily down in her room. The candles were lit, the salt circle drawn again. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady. "Emily," I whispered, "if Hannah comes tonight, we're not going to run. We're going to show her the truth. We're going to remind her of what really happened." Emily looked at me, her lip trembling. "But she'll be mad." I cupped her face in my hands. "I'll protect you. I promise." The air grew cold almost instantly, the candles flickering violently. A shadow crept across the wall, and I knew she was here. Hannah appeared slowly this time, her form solidifying out of the darkness. Her hair hung wet, her skin pale, her eyes burning with rage. "You can't keep me away from her," she hissed. "She's mine." I forced myself to stand tall, though my knees shook. "No, Hannah. She's not yours. She never was." Her face twisted, her mouth opening in a scream that rattled the windows. "I loved her. I would have protected her. I died for her." Her words hit me like a knife, and suddenly I understood. "You didn't die for her," I said softly. "You died in the fire. It wasn't your fault. But she wasn't your child, Hannah. She never was." For a moment, Hannah's form flickered, her eyes wide with something that almost looked like pain. But then her face hardened again. "She's all I have left." Emily clutched my hand tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mommy, make her stop." I tightened my grip. "Hannah, listen to me. You can't replace what you lost. You can't take my daughter. You're trapped here because of your pain. But it's over." "You have to let go," Hannah screamed again, lunging forward, but the salt circle held. The candles flared, casting shadows across her twisted face. For a moment, I saw her as she once was, young, kind, smiling at a child she loved. Then the image warped back into the monster she had become. "You'll never be rid of me," she whispered. "I'll always be watching." And then with one final scream, she vanished. The candles went out. The air grew warm again. Silence fell over the room. Emily collapsed against me, sobbing. I held her tightly, rocking her back and forth, whispering, "It's over, baby. It's over." But even as I said the words, I knew the truth. Hannah was gone. For now. But the way Emily's bunny turned its head slightly on the bed, as if watching us, told me she might never truly leave, and every night since, as I tuck my daughter into bed, I can't help but wonder, is Hannah still here, waiting in the shadows for the perfect moment to return? Or worse, is she already inside my little girl biding her time? Because sometimes when Emily smiles at me, I see Hannah's smile staring back. After that night, when Hannah vanished in the flare of candlelight, I told myself it was over. I told myself I had done enough, that I had fought for Emily, held on when everything tried to tear us apart, and somehow survived. But mothers know when something isn't right, even in the silence of the house. Even when Emily smiled at me with those wide, innocent eyes, there was always that little flicker of doubt, a shadow in the corner, a whisper too faint to catch. For weeks I tried to pretend. I cooked dinners. I walked Emily to the park. I even kissed my husband goodnight, though our marriage felt cracked in ways we couldn't admit out loud. To everyone else, we looked like a family trying to heal. But inside me, there was only fear. Fear that Hannah wasn't gone. And then it started again. It began with the bunny. Always the bunny. I had thrown it away more times than I could count, but somehow it always found its way back. One evening, I opened Emily's closet to hang up her dress, and there it was, sitting on the top shelf. Its glassy eyes staring down at me. I grabbed it, my hands shaking, and carried it straight to the fireplace. I didn't even think. I just lit a match and tossed it in. The flames swallowed it whole, the synthetic fur curling and melting. For a moment, I felt relief. But that night, when I tucked Emily into bed, she whispered, "Why did you burn Hannah's gift?" My chest tightened. "Sweetheart, that bunny wasn't good for you. It's gone now. Don't worry about it." But Emily only smiled faintly. "You can't burn what's already part of me." I barely slept. The dreams returned, darker than ever. Always fire, always shadows, always Hannah's voice whispering from the smoke. And every time I woke, I swore I could smell the faint scent of burning fabric, as though the bunny had never left. By the third night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I went back to the healer, desperate for answers. She looked older, weaker than before, as though just helping us had drained years from her life. "You should have left," she said, shaking her head. "Sometimes victory only makes them angrier. Hannah isn't just a spirit anymore. She's a parasite. She's feeding on your daughter. On all of you." My stomach dropped. "Then what do we do? How do I end this?" Her eyes darkened. "There is no easy ending. If you want to save Emily, you'll have to cut Hannah out completely. Tear her away from the bond she's forged. But be warned, Hannah won't go willingly. She'll fight to the last breath you have." I left shaking, my mind spinning. Every step I took home felt like I was walking toward a war I wasn't ready for. And sure enough, when I opened the front door, the house was wrong. Too quiet, too still. I called Emily's name. No answer. My heart thundered as I ran upstairs, throwing open her bedroom door. She wasn't there. Her bed was empty, the sheets tangled as though she had been dragged from them. And on the wall, scrawled in crayon, were the words, "She's mine now." I screamed her name, tearing through the house, my voice cracking with terror. My husband came running, his face pale when he saw the wall, and then we heard it, laughter, high-pitched. Childish laughter echoing from the basement. I had never run so fast in my life. We flung the door open, rushing down the creaking steps. The basement was dark, damp, filled with shadows that seemed to move on their own. And there, in the center of the floor, sat Emily. Her bunny was back in her arms, untouched by fire. She looked up at us, smiling sweetly. "Don't worry, Mommy, Hannah's here. She says you can't take me away anymore." And from behind her, a shape began to rise. Hannah. But this time, she wasn't flickering or faint. She was solid, stronger than ever. Her hair clung to her face like wet ropes, her skin stretched tight, her eyes black as night. She stood tall, towering over my little girl, her smile sharp and vicious. "You should have let her go," she hissed. "You should have given her to me. Now it's too late." For a moment I couldn't breathe. The basement air felt like ice, each inhale scraping my lungs raw. My daughter sat on the cold cement floor, smiling as if nothing was wrong, while this thing stood behind her like a shadow given flesh. My husband froze beside me, his eyes wide with horror. What is that?" he whispered. I swallowed hard, my voice trembling. "It's Hannah." Emily tilted her head, hugging the bunny tighter. "Don't be scared, Daddy. Hannah said she'll take care of me now." My heart twisted. "Emily, sweetheart, listen to me. Hannah can't take care of you." "She's not real, she's real!" Emily screamed, her little voice echoing off the stone walls. "She's more real than you'll ever be." I stumbled back a step, the words cutting through me. Hannah's smile widened, her eyes glinting like obsidian. "You see?" she whispered, her voice crawling across my skin. "She loves me. She trusts me. More than she ever trusted you." I shook my head violently. "No, you manipulated her. You crawled into her dreams, poisoned her thoughts. You don't love her, you're using her." Hannah stepped forward, and with each step the air grew heavier. My husband gasped, clutching his chest as though the weight was crushing him. You think I don't love her? Hannah hissed. I lost everything in that fire. Everything. My child burned while I screamed for help. And no one came. Not you, not anyone. I was left to die alone. All I wanted was another chance. Another daughter to hold. Her voice cracked on the last word, and for a split second she looked almost human, almost broken. But then her face twisted again, cruel and sharp. And now she's mine. Emily stood, her little body moving like a puppet on strings. Her eyes, my God, her eyes, flashed dark for a second, shadows swirling within them. I reached out desperately. Emily, baby, fight it! Please don't listen to her! But Hannah's voice wrapped around her like chains. Don't listen to her lies, Emily. She doesn't understand. She'll never understand us. My husband snapped out of his shock, his voice breaking. Let her go! She's just a child! Hannah turned her gaze on him, and suddenly he was lifted off his feet, slammed into the basement wall with bone-shaking force. He cried out in pain, pinned as though invisible hands held him there. Stay out of this, Hannah snarled. This isn't your fight. I rushed forward, but the air around Emily thickened like glass. When I tried to reach her, I hit something solid, an invisible barrier that sent me sprawling back. Mommy, Emily whispered, her voice echoing like two voices in one. Why won't you let me be happy? Hannah makes me happy. Tears blurred my vision. Because she's not real, sweetheart. She's dead. She died a long time ago, and she's trying to take you with her. Hannah's scream pierced the air, rattling the pipes above us. Don't you dare tell her that. The lights flickered, then shattered, plunging us into near darkness. The only glow came from Hannah herself, her skin radiating with a sickly, ghostly light. I forced myself to my feet, my body shaking, my mind screaming at me to run. But I couldn't. Not when Emily was still in her grasp. I remembered the healer's words. You'll have to cut Hannah out completely. Tear her away from the bond she's forged. But how? And then I realized Hannah wasn't just feeding on Emily. She was feeding on me, on my guilt, my fear, my weakness. The bond wasn't only with my daughter. It was with me too. If I wanted to save Emily, I would have to face Hannah head on. I stepped into the circle of light, my voice shaking but steady. Hannah, if it's me you want, then take me. Leave my daughter alone. Hannah's head snapped toward me, her smile curling unnaturally wide. You'd give yourself up? Just like that? Yes, I whispered. If it means Emily is free, then yes, Emily gasped, shaking her head violently. No, Mommy, don't leave me. Hannah laughed, a sound that made my blood run cold. Oh, how noble, how foolish. You think I want you? You think you can replace her? No. I only want what's pure, what's innocent. And that's something you can never give me. Her hand shot forward, her long, twisted fingers brushing Emily's cheek. Emily's eyes rolled back and her body went limp. Emily! I screamed, pounding my fists against the invisible barrier. My knuckles split, warm blood trickling down my hand, but I didn't care. My daughter's body jerked violently as Hannah's shadow wrapped tighter around her, sinking into her skin. Her small lips moved, whispering words that weren't hers. She's mine. She's always been mine. The voice wasn't Emily's anymore. It was Hannah's, low, guttural, echoing through the dark. My husband groaned from where he was still pinned against the wall, struggling to breathe. Do something, he gasped. Do something. But what? Every prayer I whispered felt swallowed by the darkness. Every scream only made Hannah's laughter louder. Then, like a whisper in my mind, I heard the healer's words again. Tear her away from the bond. I realized then, I couldn't fight Hannah by brute force. I had to attack the bond itself. I pressed my palms flat against the barrier, my voice shaking but fierce. Emily, listen to me. She's not your friend. She's not your mommy. She's lying to you. The shadow around Emily hissed, writhing, but I kept going. Do you remember the park, sweetheart? The way you laughed when you fed the ducks? Do you remember the song we sing before bed? The one only you and I know? That's real. I'm real. I'm your mother, Emily, not her. For a flicker of a second, Emily's eyes cleared. Her lips trembled. Mommy? Hannah shrieked, her form twisting violently. Don't listen to her. She doesn't understand us. She doesn't love you like I do. Yes, I do, I screamed back. I love you more than anything in this world. I carried you. I raised you. I fought for you every single day of your life. Don't let her steal that from us. Emily clutched her head, caught between us, tears streaming down her cheeks. It hurts. Make it stop. I pressed harder against the barrier, feeling it weaken under my desperation. My blood smeared across the invisible surface, and with each heartbeat, cracks formed in the air, glowing faintly. Fight her, baby, I begged. She can't stay if you tell her to leave. You have the power. Not her. You. Hannah's face contorted, her voice a guttural roar. No, she belongs to me. You'll never win. The lights exploded again, sparks raining from the ceiling. The ground shook beneath us, dust falling from the beams. My husband cried out as the invisible grip on him tightened, cutting off his air. I knew then this was it. This was the moment everything would be decided. I closed my eyes, pressing my forehead against the barrier. Emily, listen to me. You are my daughter. You are strong. You are loved. And you don't need Hannah. Send her back where she belongs. For a moment, silence. Then, Emily screamed. A sound so raw, so piercing, it felt like it could tear the house in two. The shadows burst from her body, writhing like snakes, slamming against the barrier around us. Hannah was yanked out, her form flickering wildly, unstable, her face twisted in fury. No, she howled. I won't go back. I won't be alone again. The barrier shattered in a thunderous crack, sending me sprawling forward. I crawled across the cement floor, scooping Emily into my arms. Her body was hot, trembling, but she was breathing. I turned just in time to see Hannah rising again, her form larger, more monstrous than ever. Her limbs stretched unnaturally, her mouth a gaping maw of blackness. You can't save her, she screeched. If I can't have her, then none of you will leave here alive. The basement walls groaned, the foundation cracking. Water dripped from burst pipes, and the smell of smoke filled the air, though there was no fire. My husband staggered to his feet, his face pale but determined. He grabbed a rusted iron rod from the floor, wielding it like a weapon. We end this. Now. I clutched Emily tightly, backing against the wall. Don't, she'll kill you. He looked at me, his eyes blazing. Then let her try. Hannah lunged forward, her shadowy limbs reaching for us. My husband swung the rod, and to my shock, it connected, tearing through her form with a sizzling crack, like iron on lightning. Hannah screamed, her body splintering into shards of black smoke, but it wasn't enough. She reformed instantly, more enraged than before. My mind raced. The healer had said the truth of her death was the key. Maybe she couldn't stand to face it. I stood tall, clutching Emily close, my voice rising above the chaos. Hannah, you're not a mother anymore. You're a ghost, trapped in the fire that killed you. That's where you belong, back in the flames. Her form froze, her eyes widening with sudden sharp terror. And then the basement around us burst into fire. Not real fire, memory fire. The walls burned. The air thickened with smoke. The sound of screaming children echoed all around us. Hannah wailed, her hands clawing at her face as the flames licked her form. No, she screamed. Not again. I won't go back. The fire closed in, consuming her shadow. My husband grabbed my arm, dragging me and Emily up the stairs as the basement filled with burning light. The last thing I heard was Hannah's voice, shrieking through the smoke. This isn't over. She'll always be mine. We burst through the basement door, just as the house shook violently, then fell silent. The fire was gone. The basement was quiet, and Hannah was nowhere to be seen. When the last echo of Hannah's scream faded, the silence in the house was deafening. I stood there in the hallway, clutching Emily so tightly I was afraid I might hurt her. My husband leaned against the wall, his chest heaving, sweat dripping down his face. For a long time, none of us spoke. We just breathed, shallow, shaky, desperate breaths like survivors crawling out of wreckage. Finally, Emily stirred in my arms, her little voice weak but clear. Mommy, is she gone? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to nod. Yes, sweetheart, she's gone. But even as the words left my lips, I wasn't sure if I believed them. We didn't go back into the basement that night. I couldn't bear to. We locked the door, shoved a heavy dresser in front of it, and collapsed together in the living room. I stayed awake long after my husband fell into an exhausted sleep. Emily lay curled against me, her tiny breaths warm against my skin. I stroked her hair, whispering over and over, "You're safe now. You're safe." But the truth was, I wasn't safe. None of us were, because in the stillness of the night, I thought I heard something. A faint whisper, buried deep in the dark, "She'll always be mine." The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows. For the first time in weeks, it felt warm instead of sickly. Birds chirped outside, and for a moment I almost convinced myself everything really was normal. Emily ate her cereal quietly, her bunny nowhere in sight. My husband sat across from me, bruises dark on his arms from where he'd been pinned. He caught my eye, and for the first time in a long while, I saw something like hope there. "Maybe it's over," he said softly. "Maybe. We actually beat her." I forced a smile, but my hands trembled as I lifted my coffee cup. Maybe. But I couldn't forget Hannah's last words. "This isn't over." That afternoon, I found Emily in her room, coloring. She looked up and beamed at me, her face brighter than I'd seen in weeks. "Look, Mommy," she said, holding up her drawing. It was of our family, me, my husband, and Emily, standing outside in the sunshine. No shadows, no dark figures, just us, my eyes filled with tears. I hugged her tightly, burying my face in her hair. "It's beautiful, baby, just beautiful." But as I pulled back, I noticed something. On the corner of the page, faint and almost hidden, was a tiny figure. A woman, standing far away, watching us. I forced myself not to react. "What's this, sweetheart?" I asked as casually as I could. Emily shrugged. "That's just Hannah. She's not here anymore, but she said she'll always watch from far away." The room tilted. My stomach lurched. I wanted to scream, to rip the paper into shreds, but I didn't. I just kissed her forehead and whispered, "Don't draw her anymore, okay?" She nodded, but her little eyes sparkled with something I couldn't name. The days passed. The house grew calmer, but inside me the storm only grew. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. Every flicker of shadow made my heart race. Sometimes, when Emily laughed, I swore I heard Hannah's laugh echoing underneath. My husband begged me to let it go. "We survived," he said. "We're together. That's all that matters." But he didn't see what I saw. He didn't feel the chill in the air when Emily whispered to her stuffed animals. He didn't wake at night to see her standing by the window, staring out into the darkness, as if waiting for someone. One night, I finally asked her, "Emily, what are you looking at?" She turned to me, her face lit by the moonlight, and for a moment I swore her eyes were darker than usual. "Hannah," she said simply. "She's outside. She says she's patient. She says she'll come back when you're not ready." I froze, my blood running cold. "Emily, you can't listen to her anymore. She's not real." But my daughter just smiled faintly and turned back to the window. "Yes, she is." That was when I realized the truth. Banishing Hannah hadn't destroyed her. It had only pushed her back, forced her outside. She was still there, waiting, circling our lives like a predator in the dark. The bond hadn't been broken. Not completely, and as much as I wanted to believe I could protect Emily forever, deep down, I knew I was fighting a war that might never end, because Hannah wasn't just a ghost. She wasn't just a memory, she was a wound that had bled into my daughter's soul, and wounds don't heal easily. That night, as I tucked Emily into bed, she whispered something that will haunt me until the day I die. "Don't worry. Mommy, Hannah says when you're gone, she'll take good care of me." My heart stopped.